know what? It's 7 o'clock and I'm a stickler for time. So we will go ahead and jump in and get started. My name is Michelle Reinhardt. I'm the president of Blue Action Democrats Southwest Austin this year. And this is a joint forum between Blue Action Democrats Southwest Austin and Circle C Area Democrats. And we welcome all the Circle C Area Democrat members. We have a few who will be, guiding us tonight as well, either helping with timing or keeping us on time or asking questions. So, and we have our candidates. Thank you guys for making time for this. I don't know how much you guys know, maybe you're all the way up to date, but the precinct chairs in Travis County will make this decision in August about who will go on the ballot, which one of these three fine individuals will be on the ballot for our Democratic candidate in November. So we're here to hear from them, ask some questions. We want to hear from you guys as well during this. We've got about 6 great questions lined up that have been contributed to us, and we picked them, kind of at random and in random order. We will also take your questions. So if you have something pressing, put it in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat. And then at the end, we'll take as many as we can, couple 3 at that point, and do the same forum, the same kind of system. And the system is, we're going to start off the evening with 1-minute opening statements. Erica is going to draw names from a bucket and tell us who goes first. And then we will go through the questions with 2-minute responses and 1-minute rebuttals. And you guys know the drill by now. So you'll be ready for all the great questions. So I will turn it over to Erica, who's going to pick for us.
Okay. So I've written down, just for transparency's sake, everybody's names, and I'm just going to fold them up, put them in this little hat. Okay, so our first speaker will be Diana. Number 2 will be Commissioner Trevillon, and that puts Andy Brown with number 3.
Okay, awesome. Oh, excellent. Thank you. I'm just jotting those down so I'll remember the order. Okay. So the next people I want to introduce are Tina Hester, who is precinct chair for precinct 303. She, in all fair transparency, she has publicly come out to support Diana. So she wants to be transparent about that. She will be asking questions. Again, she didn't put the questions together. She's asking the questions. We wanted to get precinct chairs involved in this process. Leslie Boynton is also joining us from CCAD. She's a board member. She's also chair of Precinct 309, and she's publicly supporting Andy Brown. So again, being transparent there. So I will turn it over to Tina for the first question. Britt, are you ready to time? Okay, Tina, anytime.
Thank you all for being here. And Brett, you'll show them, I just want them to know that you'll give them a little heads up when they're getting close to the end of their allotted time. So the first question would be for Diana, and the question is, during COVID-19, what have you learned from the current process that we want to continue doing or that you would change?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. There's been a lot to learn in COVID. Some things that I've seen that I've liked are that in our criminal justice system, our judges, to protect our population of those that are incarcerated and help reduce the number of those in our jails that were exposed to COVID or at risk, pushed to release more people on personal recognizance bond, and so ending the over-reliance on cash bail. I think that was a positive move. I look forward to working with our judges to help them do more of that. They've reduced the incarcerated population significantly in Travis County during the COVID time. Sheriff Hernandez has done a pretty good job to help make sure that we're mitigating risk in the jail population. I also think that we saw some good solutions around trying to get food and address food sustainability. in some parts of our county, and the partnership with our county and the Capital Area Food Bank to help provide food to families in need, I also think was a good move, and something I'd like to see to continue, and also to grow. We have a lot of opportunities to further address food sustainability, particularly in Eastern Crescent and in the southeast part of the community. The Capital Area Food Bank is a big part of that, but we have a lot more work we could do with other food partners, food-related businesses, and really trying to grow a whole food ecosystem in the eastern part of the county to really help transform that part of the county from what is currently a food desert into a bread basket, where we could use more urban farming, and again, partnering with more food-related businesses. And I think some of the other deep work that we have to do is continuing to deliver quality healthcare, not only to indigent populations, but to the working poor. There's continuing to be a shortage of testing for many of our low-income families, a lack of information on the front end for people how to get testing. We still have barriers to testing, where online appointments are required, and that's not accessible for everybody. We have language barriers and education barriers when it comes to disseminating information about how to get testing, and just overall just a general shortage in testing. So anything we can do to strengthen that work around central health, and we really need a whole revamp at this point around central health, and some of our community health partners, to make sure that we have a strong network that can actually serve the community, not only in moments of crisis, but all year round, so that we're helping to prevent illness before it occurs.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Trevelyan, your response.
Well, I think that we've learned a whole lot of things. The first thing that we've learned is that central health does not communicate with us well enough. What we found is that as soon as COVID hit, the central health group closed down the centers in the Eastern Crescent without even discussing it with the county commissioners, who approve their budget every year. We had been working for over 18 months to co-locate clinics. We used the Overton School. We made partnerships with the Manor Independent School District, the Del Valley School District. We upgraded the center that was on 71 and 973, and to have them close our centers east of 35 without even our knowledge was wrong, and I don't expect it to happen again. Immediately, we called a meeting together with the neighborhood associations and Central Health to explain why it is they took this action without the community's knowledge and without our knowledge. Central Health is going to have to do a better job of coordinating in the community, or we're going to have to make sure that the money that has been assigned to them is put in places where it will actually work for the community. We also found out during COVID that it made our census process difficult to go through, particularly with some of our low-income families and our homeless families. We need to make sure that we fight what President Trump is trying to do, and make sure that we count everybody, because it is only when we count everybody that we make sure that we get the resources that serve our entire community. We have to make sure that we're in the driver's seat about what happens in Travis County and the types of priorities that we have. We also have to make sure, another thing that we did in Precinct 1 was we worked directly with our school districts. We worked with Pflugerville, with Manor and Del Valley, and also the Central Area Food Bank, to make sure that kids who expect 2 meals a day from school have access to those meals, even though they're not at school. We had designed a plan at Pflugerville so that buses that normally take kids to school would have meals that would have buses that would take meals to kids where they normally pick them up. It is important that we make sure that we address the needs of our vulnerable populations. We also worked with our restaurant community. We worked and we gave them public dollars, but we also helped raise private dollars. What we did was our first investment was $161,000, and what we did was we paid restaurateurs, rather than have their food become waste in their refrigerators, to fix it and to feed first responders.
Okay.
We thought that was a very effective. I'm
Mom, let me
Baptist.
stop you there. There's a lot to unpack in that question. So I apologize for not giving you guys enough time. Andy, you're up next.
Baptist.
Oh, Andy, why don't you take 2 minutes, since everybody kind of got a big chunk of time. Why don't you go ahead and give us 2 minutes on that, and then we feel like we're leveling the playing field a little bit. We'll try to get back to our 1 minute rebuttals after that.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks everybody for being here tonight. My name's Andy. I'm running for Travis County Judge. So I think think about where we are with COVID. Let's step back a little bit and look at the fact that before COVID, we had 200,000 uninsured people in Travis County. And we know that that number has skyrocketed since then. So we have a big healthcare problem here. I'm gonna work for Medicare for all at the state level. And until we get it, I'm gonna work to ensure that every single person in Travis County has access to quality healthcare. Because right now the ER serves as primary care for too many people. And for people who don't qualify for lower income benefits like MAP, yet cannot afford to get healthcare on their own. And we need to kind of ask ourselves where to start. So the rate of COVID hospitalization, let's look at the numbers. So we have like 20,000 people who've been affected who tested positive for COVID in Travis County, 450 hospitalized, 218 people have died. 53% of, almost 54% of those hospitalized are Hispanic, and 11.4% are African American, which both represent way more than their corresponding population in Travis County. So this is a huge problem. And I can't help but feel that this was made worse by the fact that we don't have sufficient healthcare clinics in high Latino population areas like Del Valle. And frankly, the trailer that we do have there is only open a couple of days a week, and it was shut down when COVID first hit, just like Jeff pointed out. The healthcare infrastructure in Travis County, especially in places like Del Valle, is subpar. And we need to take a look at the COVID map, which I have now printed out a somewhat nicer version of it for people that saw me last night, and look at where the higher COVID hit populations are. They're in the high Latino, high African American parts of Travis County. So I think that we need to start in the recovery, focusing on those two parts of Travis County first to make sure that we are getting up to par with what we need to do with providing healthcare to low-income people in Travis County. And I think that's at 2 minutes, Michelle, so I'll stop.
You're timing yourself now. Okay. All right. We're apparently not doing our job. No, okay. All right. So it's our first forum. You know, CCAD's way better at this. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So our next question is going to be Leslie's going to ask that. And Commissioner Trevelyan is up next. Leslie?
Thank you, Michelle. Commissioner, what role does the county judge and county commissioners court have in ensuring that our communities of color are not harassed by law enforcement?
Well, I think that the role that the commissioners court plays and the role of the judge in the court is to make sure that we are working directly with our sheriff's office and directly with our constable's offices to make sure that people who are impacted by county officials are doing things that are fair to the community and by the book. We're fortunate that many of those organizations, the sheriff's organization has been run by women and minorities for a period of time. I think because it has been run by women and minorities for a period of time, there is a sensitivity in training, there is a sensitivity in working with the community that often you don't see in other places. When I'm out in the community visiting football games, basketball games, churches, funerals, we see our sheriff's staff and we see our constable staff being a part of the community. They are the closest to the community in most instances. I think that it is important that we recognize that we use community policing principles. I think that that has been employed by the county. I think that it is the county judge's role to make sure that that is what you hear coming from the top of the organization, that we support the training, that we pay for the training, that we make sure that we're interacting not only with our staff at the sheriff's office and at constables' offices, but with the community as well, to discuss exactly what our community's priorities are, what their expectations are, and that we convey that to our staff and make sure that the resources are available so that those issues are addressed. I think that we have done an outstanding job of making sure that we sit and work with our staff in achieving those goals.
Thank you.
Right on the money.
So response goes to Diana.
I worked in the central booking facility in the magistration courtroom for several years, presiding next to the judge over hundreds of cases. I read probable cause affidavits on a daily basis that were quite blatantly people being arrested for walking while Black and driving while brown. The first thing that I would do is work with our county attorney's office and our district attorney's office to require prosecutorial review of officer probable cause affidavits before charges are filed, and to make sure that the public defenders are available to those who are charged earlier in the arrest and the magistration process. That is like the number one thing we can do. So frequently people are arrested for charges that ultimately get dismissed in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years after has already taken a toll on their life. And the number one thing we could do is to make sure that that prosecutorial review is happening earlier and that those charges are not even being filed, let alone dismissed years later. Some other stuff we can do, like Commissioner Trevelyan alluded to, culture change comes from the top. Trainings are great and investing in those is really important. But I think y'all seen me lead as a reformer on things like diversity and inclusion at the party and making sure that that's constantly something that's on our agenda and on our minds, and doing things like working to protect our volunteers and our staff members from sexual assault and harassment, again, by making that a top priority of mine early when I came into the party and making sure that it was clear that those in our party knew that that was unacceptable.
Sorry, thank you for your response. Andy, 1 minute.
Thanks. Yeah, there's a huge responsibility on the Commissioner's Court and the county judge to address this issue. And I'm going to do that. I think the first thing we have to look at is the fact that our priorities are backwards. You know, they say your budget reflects your values. But if you look at the Travis County budget, you can see that the jail is the top line item amount in our county budget, which I think is completely backwards. So we need to shift that, reduce our jail population, and increase spending on healthcare. And there's obviously a ton of ways that we can start with criminal justice reforms. And I don't think that's limited to the county attorney or to the district attorney. I think that we can lead on that at the Commissioner's Court as well. Let's eliminate the use of warrants for traffic and minor violation. Let's work on housing instead of jailing people for criminal trespass. And let's shift 911 response from officers or deputies to mental health and social workers whenever possible. We need to look at the causes and the reasons why people are in jail and address needs first. Thanks.
So the next question is number 3, and it's in the same vein. And Andy, I believe you're up. Is that correct? Okay. So Andy, do we need a new women's jail? Would you be for or against building it, and why?
And I'm sorry, I have 2 minutes for this one since it's my.
Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So I'm opposed to a women's jail. The county approved a design firm for the women's jail a while back. They thought it needed enough beds and would cost somewhere around $90 million. And then they recalculated that, I believe, and they decided it would only cost $70 million. The design phase was approved by the county. A firm was hired, but it hit a snag a while back. And it is now, I believe, sitting on the table, but it is still in front of the Commissioner's Court and could come back at any time. And so my thought is, instead of bringing it back, let's start over and figure out how to address the needs of women in jail without sinking almost $100 million into a new jail. That's the last thing our society needs right now. The minute that we're talking about building a new jail, we have failed. We don't want to be building jails. We want to be doing things that will keep people from going to jail. We are a growing city, and it's appropriate to think through creative solutions that are better for people and keep people from going back to jail. And I understand that other people feel differently. I respect them and their position, that the women's jail would help people who are already in jail in a number of ways. I get that, but it's clear to me that there are a lot of things that we could do that we have not tried first, and we need to try everything first. So Why don't we focus on providing the same services that people talk about providing in this women's jail, but provide them outside of jail and work instead to divert or release women who are in jail? Let's take a look at our recent jail numbers. Diana was mentioning this earlier. We had 2,200 people before COVID, which immediately shot down to 1,600 because everybody was working together to let people out, not bring people in, and to not prosecute unless absolutely necessary. And this should be our starting point now. And we need to work together to get that number even lower so that the need for new jails is just not there. And if we're not going to build that jail, that keeps our bonding capacity available for other needs. Mm-hmm. You know, look at what else we have done. We've done the sobering center, which is doing great progress, but there's a lot of more work to be done. And I'm excited about the possibility of applying these kinds of solutions like we had in the sobering center to models in other needs in the community. We need more treatment, recovery, methadone availability, harm reduction in general, and we don't need a women's jail. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Diana, I think you're up next for 1 minute. Do you think we need a women's jail, and would you be for or against building it?
Working with incarcerated women is one of the first things that got me involved in politics. One of my first bills that I was able to pass as a staffer in the legislature was ensuring that incarcerated women who are pregnant had access to prenatal care while they are pregnant and incarcerated. I think we have a lot of work to do to understand what is actually needed in the jail in terms of providing humane conditions for those that are incarcerated. And I'm open to revisiting that conversation about the women's jail and making a decision with the community, including the criminal justice reform advocates, to really look at what are the conditions of the women's jail and how do we provide humane conditions for those who are incarcerated. I would also take it a step further and say that what we should probably have is a task force, a committee, somewhere where there's accountability and co-governance with community and the government working together to put together a 20-year plan and a 20-year vision for decarcerating Travis County. The women's jail is one piece of the pie when we're talking about criminal justice reform. It's a bigger picture when we're talking about the overall reform in the entire county, to actually getting away from criminalizing Black and brown bodies, to actually getting away from investing in a for-profit prison system. And I want that to be a vision we develop together with advocates.
And Commissioner, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Sure. So the question is, do we need a new women's jail? Would you be for or against building it, and why?
Well, I think that we do need a new women's jail, and I think for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you look at the facilities report that was done on on the facilities that exist in our jail, you'll find that several of the buildings that were built 40 years ago, but they were designed to have 25 years worth of usage. So some of our buildings need to be replaced already. As it relates to the women's facility, the reason that we even began to look at the system was we identified best practices, women's pods that would allow us to do the type of treatment that we are currently unable to do in the facilities as they exist. They're built in a warehouse fashion today. They're built where women and men are together. It creates a security problem. It puts the women at risk. It often puts the officers at risk too. We have to look at the facilities that we have, make sure that we have adequate healthcare facilities. Primary reason we approached a new women's facility was that we'd have more modern healthcare equipment and facilities for women that we don't have currently in our current system.
Thank you.
All right. So this is kind of a long question, and I can repeat it, just let me know. Travis County has hired a public defender, and this goes to this question would be for Andy. Is that correct? Moderator, Michelle?
No, I believe this is for Diana.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Diana.
Thank you. So Diana, Travis County has hired a public defender. She is still forming her staff and has not begun to take any clients yet, but her office is allotted $40 million over the next 3 years. Are you satisfied with the county's current plan for funding the public defender's office? And do you think that any additional funding should be obtained for the private attorneys that choose to take court-appointed cases and will still be representing over half of the county's criminal cases?
I think the Public Defender's Office was a first step and a really important step for our community to take. It was a shame that Travis County was one of the last communities of our size to not have a Public Defender's Office. So I'm glad to see that initial investment and that conversation happen. As Travis County Democratic Party Chair, I helped to bring together a forum of both our county elected officials, our community advocates, our defense bar, as well as our judges, to help have a robust conversation with the community and build some transparency into how this thing was being formed. Frequently, right, we know the government doesn't get it right on the first try. So there's going to be a lot more work that we need to do to hold this process accountable and make sure that there is transparency built in. I think there are some good pieces that were included around making sure that impacted communities, people who had involvement with the criminal justice system, were a part of the committee that helped to develop the governance around the Public Defense Office, but there's definitely a lot more work to do. I would not say that I'm satisfied with the current way that it's going. I think it's moving in the right directions, but public accountability is important. And for me, what that means, again, is bringing community and government together for true co-governance and for people to having accountability to each other. What does it mean to be accountable to the community? What are the metrics we need to be measuring people by? For example, when you think about funding criminal justice reform on criminal justice departments, frequently people say, well, we have the most arrests, so we need the most dollars. But is that really the way that we want to be measuring the function of criminal justice? Is something like a measure of you're arresting the most people, so you need more dollars? Really thinking about the metrics that we're using to hold those different entities accountable. I will say frequently across the community, this is like the number one thing I hear, whether it's about the Public Defender's Office, the Sheriff's Office, central health, integral care around mental health, is that there's not transparency and there's not real teeth in the accountability of the Commissioner's Court. Sometimes entities get funded to do a certain thing and there's a conversation about it and a general consensus that yes, that's what we're going to do, but a year later that department or that program hasn't actually delivered, and then how are they held accountable in the next budgeting process? And that's something we need to develop with community together.
Thank you. So that would be
Commissioner Trevelyan is next.
Oh, excuse me, Trevelyan. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for the question. One thing that I've focused on in my tenure as county commissioner is making sure that we use project management principles, that we do a good job of defining what it is we're planning to do, that we lay out and put a methodology together as to how we're going to do it, that we determine the phases that are necessary, the bodies of information that are necessary, the parts of our organization that are necessary to achieve our goals. One thing, you have to look at this on at least two planes. The first plane is we have to meet the metrics that have been set by the state grant that has allowed us to put the Public Defender's Office together. So we've made sure that we have put a structure in place that will allow us to not only address the issues that have been put to us in front by the state, but also so that we can continue to get the resources that are necessary that will be matched by local resources to make sure that we are doing what we need to do. As we meet locally, we have brought the entire community together and talked regularly about where we're going and how we're going to do that. I think that we're building a plan that will achieve the outcome of alignment with not only the Public Defender's Office, but also with our CAPS-D program as well.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. And Andy, just to reiterate the last part of that question, are you satisfied with the county's current plan for funding the Public Defender's Office? Do you think any additional funding should be obtained for private attorneys that choose to take what will be, even once the PD is in force, the private attorneys will still handle over half the cases?
Thanks. So I'm a lawyer and I clerked for a federal judge in McAllen, Texas when I was right out of law school, and we did largely criminal law there. And I saw the work of the Federal Public Defender's Office there. And I think it's a good model, and I liked the way that it worked. And I think they did good representation of criminal defendants overall. And I'm glad that we have a public defender office here in Travis County. We're the last county of our size not to have one, but I also know the plight of lawyers, good lawyers who defend, who are in private practice and defend people. And I do not believe that the funding is adequate for them. So to answer your question directly, there's that. But I am extremely happy that we have a public defender's office here. And I do, even though that grant sounds like a lot of money, we are going to have to figure out long-term how we continue to fund the public defender's office, because that funding will likely fall to the county once again, once the grant runs out.
Thank you.
So I think I have the next question, and I believe it goes to the commissioner. Is that correct? Commissioner, what role should the county play in addressing the problem of homelessness?
Okay, can you, all right. I think that we have been and we should be a partner with the city to make sure that we address the homelessness issues. We have been working through our constable's office, through Stacy Suit's office primarily, to make sure that we reach out to homeless camps, not only reach out to them, that we bring mobile health services to those places. We have also worked over the last several years on projects like funding programs at the Salvation Army, like making sure that we are working with Integral Care, making sure that we're building partnerships that address the whole continuum of services that are needed by the homeless community. Unless we develop a program that deals with evictions, unless we deal with a program that makes sure that we have housing affordability, unless we have a program that makes sure that we help renters pay their rent when they fall behind, our homeowners stay in their homes as their tax rates go significantly higher, then we're not addressing the whole problem. Homelessness is where we get when we have not addressed the previous stages in the continuum. And we've worked very hard to make sure that we are working as partners with the city. We are working through our corporations to provide resources that will buy down the cost of capital. Another thing that we have been talking about is looking at land that we own that we are currently not using and putting it into land trusts. We've talked to not only the county, but the city and the school district about that, to determine what we can do with resources that we have at our disposal now and make sure that they're used appropriately. So.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so, Andy, the question to you is, what role should the county play in addressing the problem of homelessness?
Thanks, Tina. The county has a huge role to play with the housing insecure. First, I don't know if any of y'all have ever done a point in time count, but it is one of the most eye-opening things that I have done. You go across Austin and Travis County and count every single person who is there who is housing insecure. And you really learn about where people are living and how they are living. At the county, I don't even know where to start. So rents are due.
And you have 1 minute to do it. That's kind of hard, right?
Exactly. This is going to be a bigger and a bigger problem. We need permanent supportive housing. We need better healthcare. We need better addiction recovery. We need better mental health. This really gives us a chance to look at our society and figure out, why is it that people are housing insecure? I personally believe that one of the most critical and effective ways to combat housing insecurity is through housing. Affordable housing, supportive housing, alternatives like Alan Graham's Community First Village. Yeah, there's a lot the county can do to answer your question.
Thank you. And Diana, the question to you.
This isn't something I talk about a lot, but in my own life, I have been homeless and experienced homelessness. I've lived in cars, I've lived and slept in storage facilities, and I've gone through my own crisis. In my particular situation, it was leaving an abusive relationship. And that's quite frequently for a lot of women and people in different situations, is that there's an economic cost to being involved in certain relationships and not having certain support systems. So I think continuing our work with Safe Alliance and making sure that there are supports in place for families, whole families together, including men with children, as well, through when we're trying to house people both temporarily and long-term. I think everything you heard here today around our partnership with Integral Healthcare, mental health services, I think our judges, our county justice of the peace did a great job imposing basically an eviction moratorium during COVID for some of our people that were experiencing some economic hardships around COVID, more that we can do around rental assistance. And I really appreciate the work of Constable 3, Stacy Suits, doing work here around immediate supports, addressing food and healthcare needs for our homeless here in the Southwest. So I think all of those things, yes, we need more of them. And it's going to be incumbent upon the next county judge to figure out how we fund them.
All right, and this is our last question before we open it up to questions from the chat. And I believe this goes to Andy, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, yay, thank you. The county is a major funder of mental health services. Our largest mental health facility is currently the jail, as far as treatment goes. But many people are in jail facing minor charges of disorder that are clearly related to their mental health issues. How would you end the cycle of arrest, mental health bed, forensic treatment, pleas, release, and re-arrest? And how can Travis County do better at funding mental health services?
Thanks, Leslie. So the key to all of this is diversion from the jail, because the jail is our largest single expenditure in the county budget, the largest line item that we have. And so given all the pressures of COVID and the fact that tax revenues will go down, that we have caps from the state, we have to look at the county and figure out where can we reallocate dollars. And I think that we can reallocate dollars from the jail to mental health and other preventative services. So I started this thing called the Sobering Center with Judge Nancy Hohengarten and about 40 other people. We started working on that in 2014. We studied the different sobering centers around the country for 3 years. And then we worked with the city council, every single city council member and every single county commissioner to get that passed. And it's now been up and running, and it has diverted over 3,400 people away from the criminal justice system altogether. So now if you get picked up for public intoxication, you don't get taken to the jail or the emergency room and then the jail. You just have a safe place to sober up. And it's working pretty well. But we've noticed on the back end, when people go through there and they want additional services, mental health, behavioral health, frankly, just healthcare in general, that's where Travis County and the city of Austin are not meeting, are falling down. And that's really why I'm running for Travis County judges, because I think the same argument that applied to the Sobering Center applies to investment in mental health in this community. So I think that the things that the county can do to reduce the fact that there's such a large population in the jail. Right now, there's around 300 people in the health services unit in the jail, which is where people are receiving mental health care there. And one thing that we can do is look to Harris County, where people, instead of waiting months and months for a bed at ASH or another facility, they have psychiatric resources right there where they can get people up to the state where they're competent to stand trial within about 15 days. And that in and of itself would significantly reduce our jail population and significantly reduce the number of people who need mental health treatment who are in the jail.
Thank you. And the 1-minute response from Diana.
Like I mentioned earlier, I think the number one thing we can do is insert prosecutorial review before charges are filed. I think diversion before charges are ever filed is the most important thing we can do to have an immediate impact on reform. Through that process, we could help provide alternatives and diversion programs, again, before charges are ever even filed or in the arrest and magistration process if charges are filed. I think overall that would help us to reduce the jail population long-term and fairly quickly, and we could divert resources from the jail into those diversion programs to help fund them. And as we heard, we need a lot of work around mental health care and around addiction recovery. What I will say is, though the Sobriety Center was a noble effort when it was thought up and it was very innovative at the time, it has continued to face challenges throughout its tenure. And we know in Travis County, some programs serving some of the people is not good enough. You know, it serves a large number of students, festival goers, tourists when we have them. And that's not necessarily the people who are most in need or most at risk for some of the situations we're talking about.
Thank you. And Commissioner Trevelyan, your 1-minute response.
Okay. Well, there are a couple of things that we have to take into consideration. I'm not happy that the courts or the courts or the jail or indigent care are our biggest cost centers, but those are our mandatory county responsibilities. So those are things that we have to do. Now, we should be challenging the state about what has happened to us since they've closed down the state schools and how that has impacted where mental health is being addressed. It's important for us also to remember that we've got to address the whole continuum. There are courts like Judge Bennett's DWI court, which at one time would assess someone, give them detox, put them in 12 steps programs, but where we had to adjust that program was to provide job training, which we have begun to do, and make sure that folks have a stable job so that they can hopefully get access to the housing that they need. It's important to look at the entire continuum, not just one part of it. Standing up one part is not going to get us to a place of stability and solvency.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, I was muted. So great, thank you. Thank you, questioners. There's a few interesting questions that are coming in. So we could just go back to Diana. I believe she's our next up. And there's a great question here from Colby. With a dramatic reduction in polling locations this cycle, what new avenues can the next county judge explore to secure more funding or use existing funding more wisely to ensure everyone in this county has adequate access to polling locations? More importantly, ensuring marginalized communities have access, like putting a polling location at Houston-Tillotson. Diana, 2 minutes.
I love this question. I actually get it quite frequently. It usually comes from David Albert, though, but I will take it from Colby as well. As party chair, right, part of our job is to administer the primary elections, and part of that work includes reviewing and approving the polling locations in concert with the Travis County Clerk's Office. I will say there was not a huge reduction this year. There was some reduction, but it wasn't significant. It's actually been a bigger challenge on trying to locate places that have the spatial requirements of our equipment and of, you know, the personnel that we have to have in this space. As y'all know, our grocery stores get crowded and cramped, and we frequently have people packing into a grocery store and then they're not going to the place 3 minutes away, the church or the other school or something like that. I would be so open to having a community process for helping to identify the most locations, because that's frequently the feedback when I get at the Travis County Clerk's Office when I go, well, why isn't this polling location place included, or what about this place, or what about that place? They tell me, you know, we checked with that place, they couldn't do it for this reason or that reason or that reason. But I bet we have plenty of business owners who care about democracy and who want to be involved in the democratic process, that they would be willing to open up some space to us if we had a better process for identifying them. So I would love to have a community process that truly has community input for helping us to identify more polling locations. And I think there are easy things like that. Obviously, Houston-Tillotson should have its own polling location. UT finally has 2. That is great. It's still not sufficient. But places like Houston-Tillotson, when we've had them at ACC, we couldn't have them at ACC recently this time around because of COVID again, like our grocery stores. But I think those are, you know, looking at all of the places of our marginalized communities. I will say I've frequently been a proponent of trying to work with Capital Metro to see if we can get voter registration happening in concert between the Travis County Voter Registrar's Office and Capital Metro to have voter registration at bus stops and on buses while people are just getting from one place to the other. So I think there's a lot more we can do in terms of community partnerships to make voting and voter registration more accessible.
Great. Commissioner Trevelyan, 1 minute.
You know, COVID has changed my mind about a lot of things. You know, I think that it is important that we make sure that we maximize our opportunities to put voting centers in communities. I think moving to voting centers so that people can vote any place near where they work, near where they shop. I think that's important, but I think that I'm interested in the strategy of making sure that we send all of our voters who are 65 or over mail-in ballots. As we start talking about how we deal with vulnerable populations, how we make it possible for everybody not only to participate, but to be safe. It is really important that we take advantage of the opportunities that program provides for us. And it's also important that we work with communities to talk about where they want to see polling places. It's also important that we make sure that we are constantly communicating and willing to adjust where necessary. But I think the mail-in process is key to participation.
Thank you. Andy, your 1 minute response.
Thanks. Would you mind reading the question one more time? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. The question is, where did it run away to? With a dramatic reduction in polling locations this cycle, we had a lot of lines in 2018, sidebar. What new avenues can the next county judge explore to secure more funding or use existing funding more wisely to ensure everyone in this county has adequate access, even extending those to Houston, Tillotson, and other places where marginalized communities could have access?
Thanks. So, I mean, to be blunt, I think the county party and the county clerk failed voters in this election. There were 5,000 people who did not get a full ballot this election, and we just can't let that happen again. I think one idea that we can borrow from Dallas County is getting an elections administrator who's dedicated only to running elections in Travis County and does not have the separate duties of running the clerk's office as well. Another idea that we can borrow from Harris County is just automatically sending out ballots to everyone who is eligible under state law, including people who are 65 and older, sending them a ballot automatically. That is going to reduce lines at the polls. That is going to increase participation, and it's going to get people used to using the vote by mail system that frankly did not work well at all this time. I think always we need to look at voting locations and expanding them and working within the constraints of state law. But I think the biggest thing, I think we need real fundamental change here, and I think we need an elections administrator in Travis County.
Okay. All right, we have one other question that's related to COVID that's interesting. And this would be for Commissioner Trevelyan, you'd have 2 minutes to answer. As the eviction ban expires, thousands of tenants may become homeless. And we're really expecting quite a tsunami, I think, of evictions and economic instability, right? Can anyone offer real proposals on how to handle a potential growing homeless situation?
Okay, all right. This is something actually that Nick Chu and Yvonne Williams and I have talked frequently about, and we've worked at the Community Action Network as well. What we know we have is an infrastructure of nonprofits and an infrastructure within the county and the city that provides a number of resources, but I don't think that we have organized and used those resources as effectively as we should. What we normally do on the county side is we put together work sessions that will allow us to put everyone in front of us, that will allow us to talk with the professionals who of the 12 nonprofits who work with eviction in the community, will allow us to pull the JPs together, will allow us to hear from the community as well. I think that there are resources, we don't effectively target those resources. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of folks that don't even know that there are 12 separate nonprofits that actually work on the issue. It is a question of organizing resources, putting together a project plan, making sure that we know exactly who is working in the system and maximizing the use of those dollars. It is important that we use the COVID dollars that are put in place now. The county has put $10 million in place to address issues around making sure that people have access to rental assistance and other assistance to keep them in their homes. It's important that we use those resources effectively, that we coordinate with the city and make sure that those resources are used effectively as well, but also that we have a real conversation about all of the tools that we have in place and that we align and organize them to do this work.
Thank you. Andy, the rebuttal is to you on this question.
Thank you. There's a couple of real concrete things. One is we can stop arresting people for criminal trespass type crimes that target homeless people, and instead do what we're doing with COVID. Is, you may not know this, but we have a couple of hotels that are reserved for people who have tested positive for COVID to quarantine themselves in, and they're frankly underutilized right now. There are hotels, there's a lot of hotel space in Austin right now. So frankly, Michelle, I think your idea of using hotels for that purpose as people are becoming housing insecure, being evicted from their homes, is a real option that we should look at. Another one is looking at the legal community. Judge Nick Chu and the other judges that deal with evictions, seeing how long they can extend the process themselves, seeing how long pro bono attorneys can help people who are being evicted from their homes. And yes, absolutely, county funding, federal funding, and state funding, everything that we can get right now for rental assistance is of critical importance, because I think that is one problem that has not fully hit us yet as a community, is people being evicted from their homes.
Diana, the question to you.
Yes, I definitely agree with the assertion that we do not have a sufficient network and information to the community for people who are looking for resources. When I told you all about my story when I was experiencing homelessness, I could not find resources that I need to help with rental assistance. And telling individuals they need to call through a list of 200 churches in Austin to ask about their rental assistance fund is not going to cut it. And it is just an endless phone list of hopelessness when you're trying to find those resources to cover your rent that month. I have an MBA. I work a lot in project management. That is what I've tried to bring to every position I have in social justice work, is that I'm a very process-oriented person. So looking at step 1 and getting us to step 100, where we want to go, and mapping that out between the resources we have, the resources we need, and managing a budget to get us there, is what I've done in every organization I've been a part of and every coalition I've built. And when we're talking about things like healthcare network, mental health network, these are all things that need their own networks. And then we also have to sync them up together, because people are not frequently only experiencing eviction or homelessness, or only experiencing mental health issues, or only experiencing addiction. We need a holistic system that addresses the needs of every Travis County resident, whatever circumstance they're getting to, and not that they're asked to go to 12 different onboarding processes to help the help that they need.
Great. Okay, so one last question from the chat. And this one comes from Daniel Bradford. Can the candidates speak to their experience with public transportation and how the county can serve as a partner with area transit organizations to improve access to and robustness of public transportation? I mean, this caught my eye because we've recently seen the Capital Metro plan. So Andy, I think this is your question for 2 minutes.
Thank you. So a little bit about my background. I've served on city and county commissions. I was on the City Ethics Commission, and I also served on the Transportation Bond Committee for the City of Austin. And a couple of things that we need to focus on with transportation. First of all, we need to recognize the biggest problem is that we have terrible traffic, and that there are too many accidents and deaths in Austin and in Texas as a whole. My number one concern, frankly, is traffic fatalities. There's an average of 10 people that die per day in crashes in Texas. There were 12.7 deaths per 100,000 people in 2018. Drunken driving is a major factor, as is speed. But other factors are also involved. And so I think the thing that we as a county can look at and that we need to focus on is safety improvements, figuring out choke points and fixing those issues, improving sidewalks, creating sidewalks where they don't exist. And we need to remember that building roads isn't all of it. We also have to focus on reducing demands, better organizing intersections, shifting modes of transportation, and increasing options for alternative modes of transportation. The County obviously has representation on Campo, but I think that we need to be a little bit more aggressive, or frankly, a lot more aggressive, advocating for mobility and emissions reductions and roads that we need here in Travis County. We don't want Campo to take away dollars that are needed to help improve transportation safety at the local level and just having all that money dump into I-35. I think I was sad to see that happened at Campo recently. I know that, in Southwest Travis County, the Southwest Parkway Barton Creek intersection is a top 10 high collision intersection in Travis County. People take it to avoid the Y. And I think we need to focus on intersections like that. And I think that's where Travis County has a big role to focus on safety in intersections within Travis County. We also need to look bigger and think bigger. And Lone Star Rails is an idea that failed. I think it was a lack of negotiating with Union Pacific properly. I want to restart those and get Lone Star Rail going again. I think my time's up. Thank you.
Sorry. Diane, I believe the rebuttal goes to you next.
Can you say the question again?
The question was, sorry, scrolling. Can the candidates speak to their experience with public transportation and how the county can serve as a partner with area transit organizations to improve access to and robustness of public transportation?
So I serve on the board of Transit for Austin as an appointee of the mayor and Judge Eckhart and Senator Watson. I've done that work for the last couple years, trying to help inform the process around Project Connect, build community engagement, and build general public education around the need for transportation, innovation in Central Texas. When I saw the first map of Project Connect, they didn't even have the Oak Hill stop on there. So that was, and that Pflugerville and Manor, right? It was a very downtown centric map, and we had to say, where's the rest of the plan? There was a rest of the plan, but they didn't think that they needed to communicate that to the community the first go around, and I knew that was amiss. I mean, that's the repeated problem with so many of the solutions that come up in Austin, is that it's very downtown centric, and it's all about getting people to and from downtown, and that's not the reality of people's lives anymore. And so continuing to be an advocate for the whole community, for far southwest, for far west, for far east, for the Eastern Crescent, for the southeast. They have a similar problem that the line stops at the airport, and people living in the southeast don't necessarily go to the airport, right? They're not traveling to the southeast for a visit. They actually live there, and they have different patterns in the southeast as well. So figuring out things like that actually reflect where our community is now, not where our community was 20 years ago, and where we're going in the future, how we build that plan together, I think, is a key part of it. Campo is a mess. It's a majority Republican body. We have to do more with our elected officials and honestly figure out how we support the outnumbered Democrats we have on there to build plans for the future that actually represent the needs of Travis County. And I think many of y'all know our Chamber of Commerce has had a really heavy hand in our transportation plans for the last several decades. And we need to have more transparent conversations about what their involvement is and why these are the certain plans coming up for transportation for the future.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Trevelyan.
This is something that I'm quite familiar with because I have served on the Cap Metro board, and I can tell you that Travis County has been more involved in the process of building equity and making sure that we address the issues of the Eastern Crescent than we have ever been. One thing that I did was, over the last 18 months, I've met every month with Central Health and 18 groups that are designed to provide resources into 78724 and 78725. Travis County staff worked with Cap Metro to build a transit development plan. This transit development plan actually speaks to how we make sure that people have access to hospitals, to make sure that Metro Access, that people know that it's available, how to get to it so that they can get their health care needs met. That we invested $330,000, Travis County did, that drew down $220 $1,000 from the FTA. We use those dollars to make sure that we get all the way out to Weberville, to our CARTS program, and bring people in. We have to make sure that our transit program addresses the healthcare needs of our rural areas. And I think through that system, we can build our transit network. And that is something that we focused on and have done to the tune of $3.5 million being spent in that area.
Thank you. All right. Well, we have come to closing thoughts, closing statements. And I'm going to give you guys each 2 minutes because I messed up and didn't give you a minute to say hello. So you get 2 minutes to say goodbye. Because we're just rolling with it tonight. So we appreciate all your patience as we get through these. And it's been a wonderful forum. Thank you to our candidates. And we're very lucky to have such well-researched, spoken candidates. So we'll go back to our order for closing thoughts, and that's Diana. 2 minutes.
Thank you, everyone, for spending the evening with us. I hope you heard some good information here that inspires you to get involved and support a candidate in this race. It is only the precinct chairs that can vote, so I do hope that you weigh in with your precinct chair about who you hope that they will cast their vote for. For information on how to contact your precinct chair, you can visit my website. I will put it in the link. I hope that what you heard from me this evening is that I'm a reformer, a coalition builder, and a public policy expert. I didn't have to wait to be elected. I've been reforming since I was a customer service clerk at HEB, battling some of our management issues around racism, sexism, working in the criminal justice system at our central booking facility, and not being satisfied when they told me this is just how the laws are written. I took that experience, I went and worked in the Capitol, I passed little bills around criminal justice reform, and I haven't stopped fighting since, including as an advocate for women's health and reproductive, battling against Greg Abbott every single day, sometimes in 7 lawsuits at one time. I'm a coalition builder. I've pushed Planned Parenthood to include immigrant justice and LGBTQ rights in our platform. I've built statewide coalitions that have included environmental rights, immigrant rights, and public education. I've included all corners of our county in our party, building partnerships with our Blue Action Democrats for our Southwest headquarters, uplifting the leadership of our Pflugerville and Manor Democrats, helping to support a new club in the Southeast, and moving meetings around our county to help address accessibility, something so easy for groups like our Lakeway Democrats. As a public policy expert, I've been very involved in reading laws, passing laws, working in the legislature and in local government for over a decade. I've been a leader in a movement for healthcare, reproductive rights, criminal justice reform. I'm currently serving on the community board advocating for Project Connect, as well as on the Expo Center Redevelopment Committee and on Austin Commission for Women. As a person who has real experience in changing laws and in healthcare, I can tell you there are no easy solutions. We're not going to fund every program, never raise taxes, and all we have to do is lobby our legislature and we're going to solve these things. There are tough problems ahead for our community. It's going to take tough solutions and innovation, and you can trust me to help build the bridge between community and government to find those solutions together.
Thank you. Commissioner Trevelyan?
Trying to find the unmute button. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to everybody this evening. I just want you to know that we all have to work together in order to make the change that's necessary for this community. I think I have a track record of working across the community, whether I was working in state government, or local government, whether I was working in the civil rights community. The goal has always been, how do we build the coalitions that are necessary to achieve the goals that our communities need for a better quality of life? I always try to make sure that as we move towards community engagement, that we're asking the community what its priorities are. How do we work together? That we put together the type of planning process that allows us to have an asset map that encourages us to have community members and organizations work together rather than compete against each other to address the needs that exist across the entire community. That we understand where our resources are, that we get an idea of where our gaps are, and we work as a community to take those, to take the resources that are necessary to address the gaps by working with those parts of the community that truly are strong. It is important for us to recognize that when we talk about the county judge, what we're talking about is an administrator. And I am the only proud non-attorney in the group. But what I came here to do was to go to the LBJ School of Public Affairs, was to work in public administration, was to understand how to put the processes in place and the resources in place to address our issues as a community. I've worked my entire career doing that. I've always worked on in some of the most difficult areas, making sure that we built solutions that would be lasting and sustainable. Thank you. Ask for your support.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you.
All right, Andy, final thoughts.
Thank you very much. It's really great to see so many friends and supporters here today. I hope I've made it clear tonight. I'm running for county judge because I think it's time for fundamental progressive change at Travis County. And Jeff and Diana are great people. I'm really thankful for the opportunity to run alongside both of them. And the good news for everybody on this call is that excitement's high. Turnout looks like it's going to be really strong this fall. And it's up to all of us to make sure that the fundamental progressive change that our county, that our country needs happens this November. And that's going to take everybody here working together. I'm an attorney in Austin, and I think that's important because the last two county judges, Sarah Eckhart and Sam Bisco, they've also been attorneys, and they've had an understanding of the law, the county codes, the local government regulations, and how they interact and how to amend them. I've run boards and served on commissions for the city and the county, from the City Ethics Commission to the Transportation Bond Committee to the Sobering Center. I was the finance director for Beto's record-breaking fundraising effort in 2018, where the campaign didn't take a dime of PAC money, yet we were able to raise over $80 million. I was certified, trained, and I worked as an EMT, giving me critical background in emergency management and triage. And in 2008, I served as your chair of the Travis County Democratic Party for 5 years. That just flew right by. Criminal justice reform and healthcare reform go hand in hand at the county. We have incredible challenges because of COVID, but we also have huge opportunities right now to improve the county's policies through criminal justice reform, diversion, and increased access to healthcare, in particular, mental health care. I had several policy meetings with precinct chairs and community leaders last week, and the consensus is that the earlier we intervene and provide basic services, the more likely we are to help and to keep people out of the jail, out of the emergency room, and other last-ditch, extremely expensive results. So let's invest in mental health care outside of the jail to make sure that the jail is no longer the largest mental health care facility in Travis County. And let's not admit defeat and build a women's jail. There are too many other options for diversion and mental health care outside of jail that need our scarce resources before we build more jails. And despite what some people in this race say publicly and privately, we can get fundamental progressive change at Travis County. I don't take well to people saying that change is impossible, so that we should keep doing it the same way, or we can't do it because the legislature does X, Y, or Z. There is everything that I have talked about today is something possible that we can do to improve Travis County government. They said that we couldn't get a sobering center, yet we got a sobering center. And now together, all of us, we can finally get fundamental progressive change at Travis County with true criminal justice and healthcare reform. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
All right, thanks everybody. Appreciate your time tonight. And we had almost 100 people here. So that's one good thing about Zoom, right? It's kind of horrible that you're at your computer all the time, but like it would have been like, you know, really hard to get 100 people in a room on a, what is it, Wednesday? What day is it? On a Wednesday night. So thank you guys for being here, and have a good night.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
for coming.
Katie. Appreciate your help.
Hi, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.